He pressed his hand against the cake, 3 tiers of green and gold I had paid for, and shoved it to the floor. The crowd gasped, but no one stopped him. Vanessa's son, Marcus, looked right at me and said, loud enough for the entire garden to hear, "Eat it off the ground, Aunt Becca. You're always saying we should be grateful for things." Laughter followed. Not the polite kind. The cruel kind that fills the air and cuts through skin. My mother laughed the hardest. My sister hid her smile behind a glass of champagne. In that moment, with frosting splattered across my shoes and sugar flowers crushed in the grass, I realized something I should have known years ago. I was never family. I was funding the performance of one. My name is Rebecca Chen. I'm 28 years old, and a few hours before this humiliation, I had walked across a stage at Stanford to collect my master's degree in environmental engineering. I should have been proud. I should have been celebrating years of late nights and exhaustion finally paying off. Instead, I stood at a party I'd paid for but didn't belong to, surrounded by people who used my success as a prop for their vanity. They wore clothes bought with my credit, toasted with champagne I'd purchased, and posed for pictures that made them look successful. But no one asked about my research, my job offer, or what it felt like to finally be free of school debt. Because to them, I wasn't a person. I was a resource. So when Marcus crushed that cake and told me to eat it off the ground, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply watched, silent, as my mother pulled out her phone to record the moment like it was comedy gold. No one defended me, not my father, not my sister, no one. And that's when something inside me stopped bending. Before I tell you how I responded, let me ask you. Have you ever been mocked by the people you'd spent your life supporting? Have you ever realized, in one brutal instant, that your love was just convenience for everyone else? If so, stay with me. Because what came next didn't just change their lives, it freed mine. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because this story, my story, is for anyone who's ever been laughed at while standing in the wreckage of something they built. The garden shimmered under the late afternoon sun, rows of white chairs, soft jazz, polished silver. Guests sipped champagne, complimenting my mother on the elegant event she'd planned. She smiled graciously, letting them believe it was her generosity that paid for every detail. I knew the truth. My savings account did. The venue invoice, the catering, the decorations, the photographer, all charged to cards carrying my name. Mom said she'd reimburse me once the investments mature. They'd been maturing for 3 years. I stood by the dessert table, pretending to check my phone. No one noticed me slip out of frame while they posed for photos. The camera always found Vanessa, her golden hair catching light, her son on her hip like an accessory. She laughed easily, spoke loudly, and drew every eye. Vanessa had a way of making irresponsibility look charming. When her online boutique failed, Mom said, "She just needs time." When her rent fell behind, Dad asked me quietly if I could help just for a month. 1 month turned into 12. 12 turned into again and again. "Becca, sweetheart." Mom waved me over. "Hold the purses for a moment while we take a family picture." Family picture. I handed over my phone and smiled from the sidelines as flashes went off. Not one person realized I wasn't in a single frame. The waitstaff circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres I'd approved on a spreadsheet. Each bite someone praised was another reminder of the hours I'd worked to pay for it. Vanessa raised a toast about family unity. My chest tightened. I lifted my glass, careful not to let the sarcasm show on my face. A few relatives approached me between songs, distant cousins, family friends. They congratulated me briefly before asking if Vanessa's business was hiring. I nodded politely. They didn't know there was no business, only debt-wearing designer labels. I excused myself and walked toward the cake display. It was stunning. 3 tiers of emerald and gold, sugar flowers curling upward like vines. The inscription read, "Congratulations, Dr. Rebecca Chen." Mom had insisted on adding doctor. When I corrected her, she laughed it off. "People respect titles," she'd said. "Don't ruin the mood with details." I'd spent years thinking details were the only thing holding us together. Payment dates, loan schedules, bills no one thanked me for covering. Now those same details made me invisible. Across the lawn, Marcus chased another child through the tables, nearly colliding with the catering staff. A tray wobbled, drinks spilled. No one scolded him. Vanessa simply called out, "He's high energy. Like his mom." Guests laughed. The servers cleaned quietly. Dad approached, loosening his tie. "Big day, huh?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," I said. "Huge." He hesitated, then added, "Your mom's proud. We all are." I nodded, though I knew pride wasn't the reason they were here. Image was. He lowered his voice. "Don't take things so seriously, Becca. You know how your sister is." I wanted to ask him why he never told her to grow up. Instead, I said, "I know," and let him drift back to the crowd. The sun dipped lower, scattering long rays across the lawn. The band switched to slower jazz, the kind meant for photos and polite conversation. I thought about leaving early, about slipping away before another round of forced laughter. But I stayed. Because walking away felt like giving up on the idea that they might one day see me as more than their safety net. A group of relatives began sharing stories about Vanessa's new consulting venture. Each tale grew taller, more exaggerated. Someone asked how she balanced motherhood and entrepreneurship. Vanessa smiled modestly, accepting the admiration that should have been earned, not borrowed. When they turned to me, it wasn't to ask about my research or my job offer. It was to say, "You must be so proud of your sister." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I am," I lied. Music swelled, glasses clinked, laughter rolled across the tables. I forced a smile, even as a quiet question echoed in my head. "How much longer will you keep paying for people who don't even see you?" That question lingered, heavier with every toast. It stayed until the moment a small pair of hands reached toward the cake knife, mischief glowing in his eyes. I should have stepped back. I didn't, because part of me wanted to see what would happen when the perfect image cracked. Mom's voice cut through the chatter. "Everyone, let's take a moment to thank our wonderful family for being here today." Glasses lifted, cameras aimed. I stood behind the crowd, watching her smile widen for each flash. "Vanessa's been doing amazing things with her new consulting business," she continued. "And of course, we're here to celebrate Rebecca, our Stanford graduate. We're so proud of both our girls." Applause. Short, polite, hollow. It wasn't for me. It was for the performance. Someone called out, "Vanessa, tell us about your clients." She laughed like a celebrity giving an interview. "Oh, just trying to inspire people online." I watched the lie hang in the air while everyone nodded. Not a single question about my research, my project, or the job offer waiting for me in San Francisco. It was as if my entire degree was an accessory to her success story. The ache behind my ribs tightened. I moved toward the cake table. At least I could claim that one small piece of the day. My cake, my name, my moment. The sugar flowers shimmered softly under the string lights. I ran a finger along the gold ribbon, steadying my breath. Just cut the cake, I told myself. Smile. Be done. Marcus appeared beside me, face flushed from running. He tugged at the tablecloth. "Don't do that," I said gently. "You'll knock it." He grinned. "Mom says you only went to school so long because you don't have a real life." My hand froze on the cake knife. "What did you say?" "She said you're weird and boring and that's why you don't have a boyfriend." He looked proud, like he'd repeated a family joke perfectly. The laughter around us dimmed. Heads turned. People smelled entertainment. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for my reaction. "Marcus," I said softly. "That's not very kind." Before I could say another word, he shoved the table. The cake trembled, wobbled, then crashed to the stone patio with a heavy thud. Frosting splattered across my dress. Crumbs scattered like ashes. Marcus's voice rang out, sharp and triumphant. "Eat it off the ground, Aunt Becca. You're always saying we should be grateful for things." Silence. Then a burst of laughter from the main table. Hesitant at first, then contagious. My mother clutched her stomach, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "Oh my God!" she gasped. "That's priceless! Someone record this!" Dad looked at me, then looked away. Vanessa half smiled, pretending to be embarrassed. "He's just a kid, Becca. Don't take it so seriously." The jazz music carried on, soft and indifferent. The servers stared at the floor, unsure whether to help or disappear. And I stood there, frosting dripping from my fingers, the cake knife still in my hand. Something went quiet inside me. Not anger, not even shame. Just a hollow stillness that stretched across my chest like a calm field after a storm. I looked at Marcus, who was waiting for me to explode, and at my family, who were waiting to see if I'd give them another story to laugh about. I gave them nothing. I set the knife down carefully, untied the catering apron I'd worn to help serve guests, straightened my dress. Mom called out, still giggling. "Becca, don't leave! We haven't done the speeches yet." I didn't answer. Each step toward the parking lot felt weightless, detached. The music faded, the laughter softened. No one followed me. I sat in my car, staring through the windshield as daylight slipped behind the hills. My reflection stared back, a face I barely recognized. There were no tears, no trembling hands, just a clarity I hadn't felt in years. For 20 minutes, I sat in silence, my phone lighting up with missed calls from people still pretending to care. Finally, I started the engine and drove away, not in rage, but in release. The road out of Napa felt endless, lined with vineyards glowing faintly in the dusk. My dress smelled like sugar and disappointment. I rolled down the window, letting the wind clear the scent. By the time I reached the city, the humiliation had settled into something sharper. Resolve. I didn't know exactly what I'd do the next morning. But I knew one thing for certain. They'd never use me again. This was the last celebration I'd ever pay for. The last time I'd let people call it love while handing me the bill. I didn't cry that night. I didn't plan revenge in words or wishes. I simply understood for the first time what freedom might look like. And it started with walking away from a cake lying in the dirt, and a family that thought it was funny. If your own family ever made you feel small for your success, tell me in the comments, how would you have reacted? Would you have stayed silent or spoken up right there? The drive home was silent, except for the hum of tires on asphalt. Streetlights slid across the windshield like slow pulses, marking the distance between who I was and who I was becoming. By the time I reached my apartment in San Francisco, the city lights had swallowed the horizon. I parked, turned off the ignition, and just sat there for a while. My hands still smelled faintly of frosting. My heels were scuffed from the gravel in that perfect garden. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than usual, but finally mine. No one had ever crossed this threshold to criticize the furniture or question the rent. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door, unzipped my dress, and let it fall across the chair. The silence was heavy, but clean. For the first time, it wasn't loneliness, it was space. I made tea, the simple act grounding me. Steam curled upward while I scrolled through my phone. 22 missed calls, 14 texts, all from family. I knew what they'd say before I opened a single message. Accusations disguised as concern. Guilt dressed as love. Still, I checked the notifications. There it was. A text from Mom. Short. Cold. We've chosen to sever all contact. Your behavior today was unacceptable. Stay away from this family forever. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then, a smaller notification popped up beneath it. Vanessa liked this message. No hesitation, no surprise, just confirmation of what I'd always known. I sat on the edge of my bed, the city glowing beyond the window, and felt the strangest thing. Peace. They'd done it for me. They'd cut the cord I hadn't been brave enough to cut myself. For years, I'd been their safety net. When my father lost his job, I covered his truck payment. When Mom's temporary health expenses appeared, I took those too. When Vanessa wanted to start her business, I co-signed the credit card. Every temporary favor had turned into another chain around my neck. Now, sitting there, I finally saw the total. Mortgage, car note, credit cards, medical bills, phone plan, all of it under my name. All of it maintained by my fear of being the bad daughter. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been updating every month. Rows of numbers filled the screen, each one representing a decision I made out of love, and they made out of convenience. $1,150 for the mortgage, $680 for the truck. $425 for the credit card, $290 for medical bills, $340 for the family phone plan, over $30,500 every month, $43,000 every year, 3 years running. I scrolled through the columns, watching the totals grow like proof of my own denial. If debt could speak, mine would have been screaming. I opened a new message, typed slowly, no insults, no explanations, just clarity. Removing my name from every loan, credit card, and payment plan tomorrow. Effective immediately. I hovered over the send button for a moment. Then I pressed it. The message sent quietly. No dramatic sound. No final punctuation from the universe. Just a blue bubble appearing on the screen. One sentence that ended 3 years of servitude. I turned my phone face down on the nightstand, made another cup of tea, and slept. Really slept, for the first time in years. The next morning, the world looked different. The sun through my window didn't feel like another work shift waiting to begin. It felt like permission. As I dressed for work, my phone began to vibrate again. At first, I ignored it. But curiosity eventually won. Calls. Dozens of them. Mom, Dad, Vanessa. Unknown numbers that were probably theirs using someone else's phone. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened my banking app. Scheduled an appointment with my financial advisor, the same woman who had helped me refinance my student loans. Message sent. Urgent account review. Need to sever co-signed obligations immediately. Then I brewed another cup of coffee and smiled for no reason. The kind of smile that comes not from happiness, but from finally being done pretending. My so-called family had made their announcement. They wanted no contact. I was just giving them exactly what they asked for. They'd taken my money, my time, my pride. Now I was taking back my name. Have you ever realized you were being used by people who called it love? Comment your story below. I read everyone. And if you've ever had to walk away for your peace, hit that like button and subscribe. Because sometimes, the quietest revenge is simply freedom. The first buzz came at 6:47 a.m. By 7, my phone was vibrating non-stop, like it had a heartbeat of its own. I ignored it, made coffee instead. Watched the city come alive outside my window, the fog rolling off the bay in soft waves. When the cup was half empty, I finally flipped the phone over. 127 missed calls. 89 text messages. The family group chat, 247 unread notifications. I took another sip before opening any of them. Mom. Call me now. Dad. Rebecca, this isn't funny. Your mother is hysterical. Vanessa. What did you do? The bank called at midnight. Another message came through while I was reading. Mom. You will ruin us if you don't fix this. A few seconds later, Vanessa. My card just got declined at Target. Everyone saw. You've humiliated me. They were unraveling under the weight of their own debts, the ones they'd forced me to carry for years. I didn't reply. I deleted the group chat and blocked their numbers temporarily. Peace returned instantly, as if silence itself had become my ally. At 9 a.m., I walked into Chen and Associates Financial Services on Montgomery Street. Floor-to-ceiling windows, pale light, the smell of paper and coffee, a place that had once intimidated me, now felt like neutral ground. Margaret, my advisor, stood when I entered. She wasn't related to me, though we shared a last name. Her handshake was steady, her eyes sharp with understanding. "Rebecca," she said, motioning to a chair. "I got your message last night. Tell me everything." I sat, exhaled slowly, and did exactly that. Every loan, every co-signed account, every quiet promise that had turned into a trap. The graduation party, the cake, the text. The years of financial suffocation dressed up as duty. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "What you're describing isn't family support, it's exploitation." For the first time, someone had said it out loud. Not manipulation, not obligation, exploitation. Margaret opened a folder already waiting on the desk. "I pulled your credit report this morning. You're listed on 7 accounts. Most are co-signed, some are refinanced under your name. We can begin removal immediately." "How soon?" I asked. "If we move aggressively, 48 to 72 hours. She looked me dead in the eye. "You want clean separation, correct? No shared assets, no shared liability." "Yes," I said. "Completely." She nodded, slid a stack of documents across the table. "These are release requests and letters to the lenders. We'll cite financial abuse and misrepresentation. Your father's temporary hardship claim, for instance. 3 years of missed payments. That's not temporary. That's fraud. The credit card your sister uses? $18,000 balance for non-essential spending." My stomach turned. 18,000? She sighed. "You've been paying interest on her lifestyle." Then softer. "Rebecca, this isn't revenge. This is self-protection." Those words landed heavier than anything my family had ever said. I picked up the pen, signed the first document, then the second, then the third. Each signature felt like closing a door I'd left open for too long. "Once these go through," Margaret said, "your name will no longer be tied to their credit history. Expect calls, threats maybe. Do not engage. Every word goes through me or my legal partner." "I understand." As I signed the final page, she smiled faintly. "You're doing something most people can't. You're choosing yourself." The elevator ride down felt weightless. The city noise outside seemed distant, muffled, like I was walking through a new kind of quiet. Not the silence of isolation. This was the silence of power. I treated myself to lunch at a small cafe nearby. No guilt, no mental math about which bill I was covering for someone else. For the first time, I didn't feel like a walking bank account. I felt like a person reclaiming her own name. That night, the messages came harder. Mom's voice messages full of panic. Vanessa's texts alternating between rage and pleading. Dad's short, defeated note. "They said the mortgage payment bounced. We have 30 days. I didn't reply. Because this wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. I went to bed with my phone on silent, paperwork stacked neatly on my desk. Each form a reminder that love without respect isn't love. It's a transaction waiting to collapse. By the second week, the quiet felt unnatural. No calls, no texts. No guilt knocking at my door. Until Tuesday evening. The buzzer rang 3 times in quick succession. I checked the video intercom. Mom stood in the lobby, coat half-buttoned, Vanessa pacing behind her. Even through the screen, their tension filled the small space. I pressed the intercom. "What do you want?" Mom's voice cracked through the speaker. "Rebecca, let us up. We need to talk." "We don't." "This isn't right," Vanessa shouted. You can't just abandon your family. You told me to stay away forever, I said evenly. I'm doing exactly what you asked. That text was emotional, Mom snapped. We were upset. You can't cut us off because of one misunderstanding. It wasn't one, I replied. It was 3 years of them. You're being cruel, she said, her tone breaking between anger and pleading. Cruel? I echoed. I paid your bills, your loans, your rent, your credit cards. I bought peace every month, and you still laughed while a child threw my cake on the ground. Silence. Then Vanessa's voice, smaller this time. You can't just erase us with signatures. I didn't erase you, I said. I removed myself from your debts. There's a difference. Mom leaned toward the camera. We're your parents. You owe us. That word, owe, finally snapped the thread. I owe you nothing, not anymore. I paused. You raised me, yes, but I paid you back in full. 3 years and $130,000 worth. We're even. Their expressions changed. Anger replaced by disbelief. Vanessa muttered something under her breath, maybe a curse, maybe regret. I ended the call. Through the hallway speaker, I still heard her yelling. Mr. Patterson from 3B opened his door and said loudly, Leave, or I'm calling the police. The sound of retreating footsteps followed. I didn't move until the building was quiet again. Then I poured tea and sat on my couch. My hands were steady, my heartbeat normal. I had expected guilt. Instead, I felt peace. 3 days later, they took their anger online. A post appeared on social media, written by Mom, shared by Vanessa. Title: When Your Daughter Steals from Her Own Family. They claimed I forged documents, drained accounts, abandoned them during a crisis. The comments multiplied quickly. Distant relatives, strangers, people eager for drama. Words like ungrateful, selfish, heartless, the usual chorus of digital outrage. Elena called the moment she saw it. Becca, do you want me to respond? No, I said. Let them talk. But they're lying. They've been lying for years. This is just public now. I took screenshots of every post, every comment. Forwarded them to Margaret with the subject line, Documentation. Her reply arrived 10 minutes later. Good, don't engage. We have bank statements and signed contracts. They have gossip. That was all I needed. For years, I'd believed that defending myself was proof of innocence. Now I understood that truth doesn't require a stage. It only needs evidence. I deleted the apps from my phone, logged out of every account that connected me to them. The silence that followed was absolute. Standing by the window that night, I looked out at the city and realized something simple. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's a single click that ends the noise. Would you have confronted them face to face or walked away like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you've ever had to protect your peace from people who twisted the truth, hit like and subscribe. Your calm might inspire someone else to take theirs back. The courier arrived on a Friday afternoon, nearly 4 weeks after the party. A plain envelope, heavy with importance, waited on my doorstep. Inside were 6 official letters from the banks and credit bureaus. Each began the same way. Rebecca Chen has been successfully removed from all listed accounts. Liability transferred to original borrowers. I read them twice to be sure. Every document confirmed what I'd worked toward. My name was free. No hidden balances, no inherited chaos. For a long moment, I just sat on the floor. Papers spread around me like proof that I'd finally stepped out of their shadow. Then the tears came, quiet, steady, not from sadness but relief. 3 years. Over $100,000. Countless arguments disguised as favors. Done. I placed the letters in a folder and opened my laptop. Waiting in my inbox was the offer letter from Cascade Environmental Solutions. The position I'd dreamed about. designing sustainable water systems for communities that needed them most. I signed, scanned, and sent it back. For the first time, every decision I made moved my life forward, not someone else's. That weekend, I walked through the farmer's market near my apartment. No phone buzzing, no emergencies waiting. I bought sunflowers, fresh bread, and coffee beans from a local vendor who smiled when I handed him cash. Simple. Peaceful. Mine. Months passed quietly. The bills were manageable now because they were mine alone. My savings grew. My breathing came easier. I stopped checking my phone expecting disaster. 6 months later, the unexpected happened. I was at my favorite coffee shop, reviewing a project file, when someone sat across from me. Vanessa. Her once perfect hair was darker, roots showing. The designer handbags were gone. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her cup. Before I could speak, she said, "I just need 5 minutes." Her voice carried none of the sharpness I remembered. 5 minutes, I said. She nodded, eyes down. I'm sorry. The words hung there, fragile, uncertain. I'm sorry for the party, for Marcus, for everything. I used you because it was easy. I thought you'd never stop helping. Her eyes glistened. Mom says you ruined her life, but I think you just stopped letting her ruin yours. I watched her for a moment, waiting for the usual manipulation, the hidden request. But all I saw was exhaustion. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, she said. I just needed you to know I finally understand what you were trying to tell us. She left before I could reply. I didn't stop her. Forgiveness doesn't always require conversation. It often begins in silence. A year after that awful party, Elena insisted on hosting my birthday at her place. Small, warm, real. 12 people who actually cared. There was laughter, off-key singing, and a cake decorated with tiny edible tools and the words, Dr. Rebecca Chen, PhD candidate. Everyone cheered as I sliced the first piece. No one mocked, no one demanded. The only thing breaking the silence was genuine applause. As I looked around the room, friends, colleagues, people who knew my worth, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. This was the celebration I had been trying to create all along. Not for show, not for approval, just for love, the kind that costs nothing. My phone buzzed once during the party, an unknown number. The message read, "Happy birthday, Becca. I hope you're doing well. Vanessa." I stared at it for a few seconds, then deleted it without replying. Maybe one day forgiveness would come fully. But tonight wasn't about the past. Tonight was about the peace that comes after choosing yourself. About cake that stayed on the table, laughter that didn't sting, and people who didn't need to be paid to celebrate me. If you've ever had to rebuild from the people who broke you, remember this. Walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder. You don't owe anyone your peace. Thank you for watching. Or